Might be on one of those.
Yeah, I pulled it up. I didn't see anything. All right, committee. We're a few members short, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I forgot my gavel, so I don't get the noise effect anymore. But this is the House Taxation Committee. It is always my intent to start on time, so I'd welcome everyone to be prompt, or you might miss some very important information as we start the meeting. Just kidding. I just first of all, welcome everyone. It's great to see some returning faces. It's great to see some new faces in the legislature on the committee, and it's good to see some new legislators, not new legislators, but new to the tax committee as well. So, welcome to everyone. I always start the meeting first of the year, asking everyone to silence their devices. We have, as you may well know, the unwritten rule in committee and chamber that if you have a device go off during the committee meeting, you owe everyone treats the next time. So would like to remind everyone, and I better do that myself or I'll be owing. With that out of the way, I want to welcome everyone officially. My welcome today will be a little bit more extended. Usually my welcome is call the meeting to order and let's get to work. But today I want to just, since it's the very first meeting of the session, I want to say a special welcome and a returning welcome to my ranking member, Representative Tom Sawyer. It's great to be on the tax committee with you again. I sat down there in that chair several years ago when you were the ranking member. So I really look forward and thank you for your participation and joining us in the good work that we'll get done. I also want to thank my vice chair, Brian Bergkamp. He's been a member of the committee for the last couple of years, and welcome him into the vice chair position. I haven't told him how fun bill briefs are yet, but I have a great team. We have a great team on the tax committee here with these fine leaders in these positions. So always feel free to reach out to any one of us three with any concerns or thoughts that you might have. I want to let everyone know that it is always my intention to run a fair and equal committee. It's not my job to control the content. It's my job to control the process. The content is essentially yours. And with that, I'm going to throw down the gauntlet because we have work to do in the tax committee. I don't want to direct that work. I want you all to I want to encourage everyone to be engaged, read the material, listen to your conferees, ask questions, participate as much as possible, because what comes out of this committee is not my bill. It's our bill. So I want you to engage in the process and be as active as you want to, asking questions, offering amendments when you work bills. I really want this to be a good committee process. To do that, obviously, communication is key. I'm trying to read some notes I made here. I kind of go off script every once in a while, as some of you know. So I try to pull the rabbit back out of the hole sometimes. But in the spirit of communication, I want to start off mostly for the benefit of some of our newer members and just kind of give you an overview of what the bill process is in committee. The first item of business in committee is always requests for bill introductions. And it's kind of a common misconception that you introduce bills in committee. You make a request for the committee to sponsor a bill. A bill is not actually introduced until it is turned into the chief clerk of the House and then read in during the session. That is when it gets its bill number and it is formally introduced. What we have at the first part of the meeting here, we'll have folks come up. This tax committee, I allow introductions from the gallery. Some committees just have introductions from the committee members. I allow both. But that is really a request for the committee to sponsor a bill. So the name at the top of the bill is the Committee on Taxation. If you have a bill that you don't want to bring into committee, you can just turn that into the chief clerk as well yourself. But when we do that at the first item of business, that is a request basically for the committee to sponsor the bill. In House Rule 1304, this is not in the committee rules, so I wanted to just refresh everyone's memory. When you do request introduction of a bill, please include your name, the RS number. And for those of you who are new, when a bill draft, before it gets its bill number, it's identified by an RS number. That's the reviser of statutes. They have a number. It's usually 23 RS and then a 4-digit number. That is what they use to identify that bill draft, so they make sure and get the right one turned in. So you give your name, the RS number, a brief description of what the bill does, and if you are introducing it on behalf of an entity or a company or an organization, please also disclose who that entity is at that time. We are a committee that I've always accepted bills without objection, basically acclamation. If there is objection, we simply take it to a vote. I don't know that we've ever had that since I've been on tax, but we aren't voting on the bill. We're just voting that the bill is entered into the system, and then we can have a hearing on it possibly at a later time. Once the bill is introduced across the floor, I have had some people come up to me the meeting after they request the introduction and say, can we schedule a hearing for that on Monday? It's a little bit too quick. I appreciate the enthusiasm, but the bill has a couple of days before it can be turned in. Sometimes there's some final edits before I can turn that bill in to the chief clerk, and then it has to be referred back to our committee. We cannot schedule anything until it is referred back to the committee. So usually that process takes at the quickest maybe 2 or 3 days. So always work with me. If you have a bill that you're working on and that you need to expedite, please let me know, and I will try to do my part to make sure that happens. Once it is referred to the committee, we have a bill listing on, or a bill index is the official term, I think, on the website, but you can go on there and see what bills have been referred to the committee, and then we will schedule hearings. Now, it's never my intention to surprise anyone with a hearing. If you have a bill that you've requested, please work with me, because I want to work with you on getting your conferees in, so we have plenty of time to coordinate schedules. I want to make sure we get all the information we can. It's never going to be my intent to hurry something or try to schedule something that isn't going to work with conferees. I also want to do a brief reminder. I've never had an issue in this committee, but at the hearing, when we do schedule that, that is a time for the committee to ask questions of the conferees, the proponents, and the opponents. Sometimes we have some neutral conferees. That is not the time to debate the bill. We just need to make sure we understand the details of the conferee's testimony. The debate will come when we take action on the bill. But I always want to remind everyone, we always show respect to each other. We always show respect to the conferees with your questions. I learned a long time ago, you receive the same amount of respect that you show. So keep that in mind and when we are working together on these. The last piece is a little bit of terminology. You might hear us say we're going to work a bill. That's when we actually take action in committee. Now, it's another common misconception that we pass bills out of committee. We do not pass bills. We recommend for the committee of the whole, the entire chamber. Yeah. Welcome, Barb. When we make a motion to report a bill out of committee, we make a motion to report favorably for passage, or sometimes without recommendation, but we don't actually pass bills out of the committee. Now, something that is going to change a little bit this year in the process, the chairs have gotten together and tried to make a little more uniformity within the committees. So you'll notice the committee rules, while they are pretty much the same, are a little bit different format than they were last year, because we are all adopting, every committee is adopting uniform rules. And also the way that we conduct business. In the years past, when we work a bill, when we bring a bill up for action, I'll ask for a motion, and then there will be a motion and a second, and then we will begin discussion on the bill. What we're doing this year is, when there is action on a bill, I will simply bring the bill up for discussion, and we will start there. And if there are amendments, and then at the close of discussion, I'll ask, are there any further amendments? Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I would accept a motion at that time, because sometimes it's interesting, the person that first makes the motion to pass a bill, maybe there's some amendments that get on there that they aren't necessarily favorable towards. So maybe they don't want to renew their motion. So we're going to just bring the bills up. We won't have an original motion and then a renewal of the motion. We'll just begin discussion, having amendments, and then report the bill out. I don't really mean to belabor the point, but I feel like I've already been doing too much talking. So I just want to encourage everyone. If you have questions in the process, come talk to me. Come talk to Representative Sawyer or Representative Bergkamp. We want to help you be successful in the committee because this is truly all our work. And with that, I want to first ask the first item of business, are there any requests for bill introductions? Either from the committee or from the gallery. Looks like we're going to have kind of a slow year this year. No, I'm just kidding. Wait till our next meeting. Since we have completed that item of business, I would like to informally just kind of go around the room right quick with committee members and make brief introductions. Tell us your name, your district, the area of Kansas that you represent, and just a little bit about yourself, maybe your family or what your job is outside of these walls in the Capitol, and just let us know a little bit about yourself. And I did warn Representative Haswood in advance because that first person, you're always looking around, am I going to be first? I did give her heads up, and I would like to start with her and come around the table, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Christina Haswood. I represent House District 10 from Lawrence, Kansas. Starting my second term, my first time here on the tax committee. A little interesting about me. I guess out of the legislative session, I do consulting and I do a fellowship. Just trying to make politics fun for young folks.
How are you doing with that? Is it fun?
It's okay. Yeah. You guys help.
Hello, my name is Dennis Miller, and I'm from House District 14 in Olathe. And I have two things that I just wanted to bring up, and I'll let it go to the next person. I hate taxes, and I also hate the tax forms. So that was one reason that I wanted to be on this committee. Maybe I could help on either side of that. So thank you.
John Alcala, I represent the 57th district, which is here in Topeka, Northeast Shawnee County. I've been elected official since 1996, local government. I came up to the Capitol in 2012, retired Colgate Palmolive guy, and I love politics, even when I'm at the foot end of it.
How many years have you been on tax, John?
My first year up here, I was on tax.
Were you? Okay. I wasn't aware. I knew you were on it for a lot of years. So thank you for your experience.
I enjoy it. I think that's because nobody wants to come and meet at 3:30 and stay till 5:30.
Especially when you have a chair that has Friday meetings all the time.
That's right.
Just kidding.
I'm Barb Wassinger. My district is the 111th district. This year it's kind of shrunk in geographic size because of shrinkage outside in the rural areas. I cover Hayes and Victoria. It's kind of embarrassing when everyone gives me all the large districts they have in Western Kansas, for mine is fairly small in that. And this is my 5th year on tax and my 3rd term. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Francis Everkamp, represent the 61st district, which is a little bit of Jackson County, or quite a bit of Jackson County, and also the rural part of Pottawatomie County. Starting my 4th term. Time flies. And 3rd year here on tax. Looking forward to serving with you again, Mr. Chairman. And I also hate taxes and Friday afternoon meetings. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Noted.
I'm Clark Sanders. I'm from the 69th district. My entire district is in Saline County. It changed a little bit with redistricting. I now have less of Salina and more of rural Saline County. I'm starting my 2nd term, and I served on the tax committee the first 2 years I was up here.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Mike Thompson, and this is my first time on the committee, but also my first time in the House. So newly elected, And I'm prior military. I'm retired military. I was with special operations with the Navy, and then got out and was a police officer and different things, and then went back into ministry. Or went into ministry and went back on active duty with the Army at age 42. So I retired with 22 and a half years with military. So I'm looking forward to this. My district is, I represent district number 33 out of Wyandotte County, and it covers part of Kansas City, Kansas, and Turner, Edwardsville, Muncie, Morris, and then Bonner Springs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Shannon Francis, and I represent the 125th District, so I'm the last one on the list. Always. I've got a number of areas of distinction. I represent Liberal, Kansas, Plains, and Kismet, Kansas, Seward County, and a portion of Meade County. But that also makes me the Liberal Republican. This is my second stint on tax. Earlier in my legislative career, I think I spent 4 years in tax, and I've been sentenced to this duty again. But I'm pleased to serve with another Western Kansan, Chairman Smith. As far as personal life, I'm involved in commercial real estate, residential real estate. I've been a mortgage broker before, a bunch of different things. So anyway, glad to be back.
Good afternoon, everybody. Brian Burkamp out of Wichita, Kansas. This is my third year in the legislature and third year on the tax committee. I look forward to the upcoming session and getting to know everybody as we progress. No fun facts for me today.
My name is Adam Smith. I actually represent the 120th district, which is pretty close to 125. But I live in Weston, Kansas, and my claim to fame is I probably get the award for farthest traveled. Maybe, I don't know, Shannon, you might have the farthest, but I live 1 mile from the Colorado border, and it's kind of a straight shot out there on I-70. So I try not to complain too much about that as long as our roads are in good shape. But there's 6 counties in Northwest Kansas that I serve. My wife and I and our 3 little kids are the 3rd generation to own and operate our family ranch out there. So when I'm not in the capital, I'm usually out chasing cows somewhere or fixing fence, in that order usually. This is my second term to chair the tax committee. And I told everybody a couple years ago, I really don't know anything about taxes. I just don't think the speaker can resist putting somebody named Adam Smith in charge of taxes. So with that, I'll turn it over to our other famous name, Representative Tom Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman represents 6 counties. I represent about 6 square miles of part of Wichita. I represent the Delano area of Wichita, District 95. I'm trying to think how many years I've been on tax. This is my 3rd stint on tax. I think I've served 14 years on tax committee and been ranking D probably 10 of those 14 years. And I was accountant by profession, so I have a lot of interest in tax. Enjoy this committee.
I wasn't going to ask you how many years because I didn't know if you could remember it. I know.
I'm Jerry Stogstill. I represent the 21st District in Northeast Johnson County. My district is composed of mostly of Prairie Village, Kansas, and parts of Overland Park. And this is my 4th term and my 5th year on tax. And in my profession that actually pays money to allow me to stay up here, I have a real estate investment company and a fine arts photography company.
Hello, I'm John Epley. I'm from Northeast Kansas, extreme Northeast Kansas. I represent District 63, which includes all of Atchison County and all of Donovan County. Kansas is a perfect rectangle except for my part of the state. So I'm the irregular representative from the state of Kansas. My house used to look right onto the Missouri River, so I'm about as close to Missouri as Adam is to Colorado. I am a family physician for 42 years, and so I hate taxes too. And I've been burdened with this for 7 years now. This is my 4th time on tax. I've tried to get out of it, and because of that, and you're worried about not having anything to do, you've already seen some of my bills. I'm going to inundate you with many tax bills in this session. So I'll make up for your light workload. Mr. Chairman.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. My name is Ron Bryce. I'm from Montgomery County, Coffeyville, Independence. I'm also a family physician. So if you are feeling ill, come to this corner of the table. No, but I'm happy to be here. I've been a physician for 37 years. And also on the side, we do have a coffee company. We'll be supplying coffee to the speaker and majority leaders' offices. So if you guys like coffee, we'll be bringing it next week.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nick Hoheisel, I represent the 97th District, which is all of Southwest Wichita. I'm basically wedged in between the vice chairman and the ranking minority member there. This is my fifth year in the legislature, my first year on tax. My normal 330 committee was judiciary. I begged all 4 years to get off judiciary. They appointed me to this committee, and then the chairman and I were talking one day, and he said I meet on Fridays, and so I begged the chair of judiciary to take me back, and he wouldn't take me back. So here I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, if you're geographically between the vice chair and the ranking, maybe you'd like to take this chair for a few days now.
Good afternoon. My name is Carl Turner. I'm with District 28, which is my house is probably a mile from the Missouri border. So it's in Johnson County, the cities of Leawood and Overland Park. This is my second term. So and I was also on tax committee in the first term. So looking forward to it. It's a good group. We do some good policy here. So thank you.
I'm Nate Butler. I represent the 68th District, which is the southern half of Gary County, Junction City, home of the Big Red One, 1st Infantry Division, all of Morris County, Council Grove, and then a little bit of southern portion of Riley County. My background is I'm retired military, retired out of Fort Riley, and after 22 years in the military, and support Fort Riley heavily in our veterans. And my new life after retirement from the military, I've pastored churches, and now I call it a consultant, but it's a strategist for churches in 14 counties in north central Kansas. So with the Southern Baptist Convention, and then I also sell real estate on a side job. Keep me going.
My name's Henry Helgerson, 83rd District in East Wichita, the one that's late all the time.
Hi, Stephanie Clayton. This is my 11th year in the legislature. I think this is, I think maybe my third term on tax. I am from Johnson County. Like many other legislators here, I live about a mile from the border. I hate sales tax in particular because as a Johnson County, and I like to buy things, and in particular, I hate it when people buy things in Missouri. So want to make sure we can get that sales tax rate low so that we have consumption occurring where it should be, which is in our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Tom Kessler. I represent the 96th District, which is South Central Wichita. I am also in between the vice and the ranking, about equal distance between them. This is my second session, my third year on tax, and I am a small business owner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Dave Beeler. I'm from District 40, that is Leavenworth and Lansing and some rural areas in southern Leavenworth County. Prior to this is my first term, obviously first stint on tax. I retired from Hallmark Cars with about 36 years of operations management and 28 years in the United States Navy, retired last May. So this is my life after retirement, and I might want to have my head examined, I guess, but glad to be here. Thank you.
We probably all need a little bit of that. I do want to just do a quick kind of a logistics announcement here. For those of you who are new, I mean, you've probably run these microphones and know, but if the blue light is on, the microphone is pretty hot and they will pick up side conversations. Just ask you to make sure that button is off when you're done speaking. And sometimes, since we are live streamed, this is on an internal audio archive, but it's also broadcast over YouTube. And really speak into the mic when you're speaking, because if you're talking back here, sometimes it's not picking it up as well. But just wanted to throw that out there because we do always run it because it's easy to start talking to somebody and get out of the point of the microphone. But thank you all for those introductions. I'd also like to start with Mr. Penner here and introduce our staff. These are you all are very important, but these are some of the most important people in this room because without them, the work cannot get done. So introduce yourself a little bit and explain a little bit about what your job is for the committee.
My name is Eddie Penner. Work with Legislative Research Department. This is my 10th session working for Legislative Research. My 4th session staffing this particular committee, but I've staffed at least one of the two House committee, at least one of the two tax committees, excuse me, each of my 10 years with the legislature. This is my 3rd year in the role of economist for the research department. And so this committee, one of the main things that the research department does is we draft the supplemental notes for the bills that you pass out of committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Eric Adell. I'm with Legislative Research as well, and this is my 2nd session with the legislature.
And if I just want to interject right quick, Legislative Research is the data of our committee. If you have a question about an impact or some of the information, Legislative Research, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat, you go to them, you'll get the same answer. They're nonpartisan. They do a fantastic job of working with all the departments, mostly in this committee. It's the Department of Revenue to get good, accurate numbers to you for any questions that you might have about certain bills or how an amendment would impact a certain bill. But we'll go ahead. My office assistant is also here today.
My name is Bob Bernatus, and I'm a brand new office assistant. I'm assigned to Representative Smith.
Yeah, if you call my office, Bob will take good care of you. So thanks for coming in, Bob. What's that?
My name is Leah Gerard. I am a committee assistant, and this is my 7th year with taxation, and I retired from AT&T.
Yes, my name is Dennis Nicholson. I am with the Broadcasting Services. I am the guy that shoots all this out to the interwebs, into the world. This is my 2nd session here. I don't mind any of the committees. I don't like taxes, but water is wet. And my wife and I, we welcomed a baby boy into our family 2 months ago. And yeah, it's fun not sleeping.
Yeah. Well, on behalf of the committee, congratulations. And Dennis was with us last year, so welcome back to the committee. It's good to see a familiar face.
Adam Sievers, Revisor of Statutes Office. Our office is the entity that drafts bills, drafts committee amendments, drafts floor amendments, gives general legal advice, assists with some other odds and ends. I've been in this position for about 11 years. This is my 11th session, dealing primarily with tax issues.
And I am Amelia Kovar Donahue, and I am also with the Revisor's Office, an assistant revisor. This is my 5th session with the legislature, 5th session staffing this committee. My background is that I have been an attorney with the Department of Revenue in their Division of Property Valuation, and also an attorney with the Board of Tax Appeals. So that's a little bit of my background. And we also, another thing you may see us here in committee is that we do the bill briefing at the beginning of hearings.
Thank you. And thank you once again to all the staff, all the way from my staff in my office and all the OAs that we have that do a good job of keeping us in line with our calendars and schedules, and the revisors and research as well. At this time, I think we'll go ahead and I would welcome Adam Sievers to the mic to do a quick review of the committee rules, and then we will proceed on to the final item of business. And I will reiterate that these committee rules, while they are a little bit different format, these were adopted. These are uniform. These are the same rules you're likely seeing in every other committee. Just wanted to give you an overview of those and see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the chairman stated, he asked me to kind of just go through the rules real quickly. I'll try and be very brief and go through these. I believe you all have copies in front of you, if I'm not mistaken. I'll just read through them just so everyone's aware of them. Under the general rules of the House Tax Committee for the 2023-24 biennium, the rule number 1, in any case where committee rules do not apply, House rules shall govern. In any case where House rules do not apply, Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure shall govern. All powers, duties, and responsibilities not addressed herein are reserved to the chair. Number 2, the chair shall determine the committee agenda, including scheduling and the order of business. Number 3, the chair reserves the right to limit testimony that is cumulative in nature and may limit testimony when necessary to a specific number of minutes. Number 4, the chair reserves the right to limit questioning of conferees by committee members in the interest of time and in the interest of fairness to conferees and other committee members. Rule number 5, the use of cameras, photographic lights, and recording devices are subject to reasonable rules and limitations determined by the chairperson that are designed to ensure the orderly conduct of the proceedings at any meeting. Number 6, no bill or resolution shall be taken up for committee vote unless announced by the chair. Number 7, the chair may allow for testimony to be taken by live video conference through WebEx, but be taken by live video conference through WebEx, excuse me. If the chair allows for live video testimony, the privilege shall be extended to any conferee appearing before the committee. Number 8, the chair may allow committee members to appear via live video conference or hold a committee meeting by video live conference. Number 9, granting excused absences is reserved to the chair. Number 10, this is rules of conduct. Cellular phones and other electronic devices with audible tones are prohibited in the committee room unless audible tones or ringers are disabled. Number 11, committee members shall not address conferees unless and until permission is granted by the chair. Number 12, no conferee shall be interrupted during the presentation of their testimony except with the permission of the chair. Number 13, questioning of a conferee shall be limited to the subject matter of the agenda for the day, except as may otherwise be allowed by the chair. Number 14, committee members shall not be approached during a committee hearing or deliberations by anyone other than fellow legislative members or legislative staff. Number 15, the chair reserves the right to take such action as may be necessary to prevent disruptive behavior in the committee room or via WebEx during hearings and deliberations. Under the subheading of committee action, number 16, a motion requires a second to be in order. Number 17, a substitute motion is in order, but no additional substitute motions shall be in order until the prior substitute motion is disposed of. Number 18, amendments to motions are not in order except upon consent of the member making the motion and his or her second. Number 19, a motion to table or take from the table shall be in order only when such item is on the agenda or is taken up by the chair. The motion requires a simple majority of those present and is, unless otherwise determined by the chair, non-debatable. Number 20, a request from any member that their vote be recorded shall be granted. Number 21, members participating in a meeting via WebEx must do so without any other member, registered lobbyist, or executive branch employee in their presence or in contemporaneous communication with that member. Number 22, no member shall vote on any question before the committee unless such member is in the State House when casting his or her vote and must comply with Rule 21. And finally, Rule 23, adjournment is reserved to the chair.
Thank you for that very, very good overview. Committee, are there any questions regarding the committee rules? There is also a set of conferee rules that talks about submitting testimony. We are a paperless committee, so years past, conferees have had to provide X number of copies. That is no longer required. We distribute all that information electronically, so we don't have the piles and piles and piles of paper. But any questions regarding the rules? Seeing none. Oh, yes. Representative Eppley.
Just be sure and clarify, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just to clarify for the new members, if we're under the dome here and we're in our office on WebEx by ourselves, are we afforded the opportunity then to vote on business before the committee?
Yes, you are. This kind of came about. I'll give you a little bit of a history lesson here quickly. This came about during COVID years where we could not meet in person, and it was decided constitutionally that we could vote on committee matters as long as we're within the Capitol. We didn't have to be in the same room, but that has continued. I did want to make a little comment on presence via WebEx. I really encourage everyone to attend in person if possible. I understand there are circumstances that I don't need to be made aware of. If you feel that that's the safe way for you to participate, either due to illness or something else, you can always participate, even if you're driving down the road on I-70 and listen in. That's not considered an absence in my mind, because you are engaged and you can ask questions. If you have it on your phone, I would ask that you not be driving and doing that at the same time. But the matter of voting is strictly related to working on bills and passing amendments or making amendments to bills and such. But the rapport that we build with our seatmates, our committee members, by participating in person, I really want to encourage that at all times if possible, but I'll leave that at your discretion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Any further questions? Yes, Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for conferees, if they're giving oral testimony, they still have to are required to do written testimony as well.
Written, or should we say printed testimony, that can be submitted electronically, but yes, that is a requirement to submit your testimony in writing. Some people do that only. Some people also appear before the committee, but we do still need that. We just don't need the physical copies. We used to require that of the conferees because there was just no way that our office staff could print off that many copies in time for a meeting sometimes. So since we've went paperless in this committee, it's a lot easier to distribute that information very quickly. And back on the WebEx topic, we still allow conferees to appear virtually. We will have that multiple times throughout the year. Sometimes we have folks in New York or different areas that are wanting to weigh in on issues in Kansas. So we do allow that at all times. So, any further comments or questions on the rules? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Siebers. And at this time, we'll move on to our final topic for the day, and that is Mr. Penner with Kansas Legislative Research, and he will be giving us an overview of the most recent fall of 2022 consensus revenue estimates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. In front of you, you should have a 10-page memo from our office that is dated November 21st, 2022. It's actually from our office and the Division of the Budget jointly, and it is to the governor and the Legislative Coordinating Council. That is what is referred to as colloquially as the long memo of the consensus revenue estimates. Right now, I'm going to walk through kind of four things for the benefit of the committee. The first of those, since there are several new members of the committee, what the CRE process is and how that works. The second of those, just a really quick high-level summary of the group's economic forecast. Third, I'll get into the actual revenue forecast that we have for the state, and then finally, just as kind of as a concluding matter, what you might look for in the coming months from state receipts. So first, to start off with the consensus revenue estimating process, in addition to what the chair mentioned that we do and what I mentioned in terms of the supplemental notes, our office serves as the legislature's representatives in arriving at the state's consensus revenue estimates. The state of Kansas has used a consensus process for estimating revenues since at least the 1970s, when the current process was put into statute. Statutorily, those amount to an agreement between the director of the Legislative Research Department and the governor's director of the budget in terms of what the receipts in the state general fund will be for the current year and the following fiscal year. As a practical matter, it is a little bit bigger process than that. We of course involve the Department of Revenue. We involve some consulting economists from the state research universities. We involve a number of other state agency representatives, and then in addition to the directors of legislative research and the budget, their staffs are involved as well. Statutorily, those estimates are required to be made once by November 4th As a practical matter, that estimate is usually made in the second week of November. And then once by April 20th, as a practical matter, that estimate is usually made on April 20th. That is because in the second half of the month of April, we are learning a lot every single day about the state of receipts at that point in time, because of that being individual income tax and corporate income tax filing season. In the month of November, you really don't learn a lot about receipts for the fiscal year between the second week of November and late November, and then by the time you throw in the Thanksgiving holiday getting in the way, it really just doesn't add a lot of value to try to put that meeting on exactly December 4th, the deadline to it, the way that it does add value in the spring. And then also we issue a legislative adjustments memo, usually in the month of June. It's shortly after the legislature adjourns sine die. And in that memo, we adjust the April estimates for any legislation enacted by the legislature and signed into law after that date. And so that's the times that those estimates get updated. Also, as a practical matter, we do further parse those estimates into 12 individual monthly estimates, and then we provide monthly reports on the status of those estimates. I would advise you that those are designed to be status reports and are not truly individual estimates, and those monthly reports do have some very distinct limitations to them, one of which I'll touch on at the conclusion of my presentation today in terms of what to look for in the coming months. And so with that being said, I'll jump right into the economic forecast that we come up with. If you turn on the memo to page 4, the table at the top of that page has a table that highlights our economic forecast in terms of some key variables. You'll notice that for calendar year 2023, we are estimating real U.S. gross domestic product growth of 1.1%. We are estimating inflation to be at 5% over the course of the year, and so a nominal growth rate of 6.1%. For calendar year 2024, we're expecting a slightly larger real GDP growth of 1.6%, inflation at 4%, and so nominal growth at about 5.6%. I would note that that 1.1 and 1.6% level for GDP growth both of those are pretty modest in terms of real growth. And I would also, of course, note that the 5 and the 4% estimates for inflation are certainly higher than anyone wants. And so those. Right now, we have kind of a low real growth environment and a high inflationary environment. But what those two things combine to yield is a relatively high nominal growth environment. And for purposes of state receipts, it's oftentimes that nominal growth that drives state receipts upwards or downwards if the nominal growth were to be negative. And so it doesn't really matter to the estimating group when we're forecasting the amount of taxes that the state is going to receive if the 5% growth in taxes is attributable to 4% inflation and 1% real growth, or vice versa. So for purposes of tax receipts, the key thing is usually nominal growth to look at. Of course, for other economic concerns, real growth and inflationary, the distinction there is much more important. But for tax receipts itself, nominal growth is really the driver of the day. And so from there, I would also note, if I can find the right page of notes, that there are accordingly kind of two risks to the forecast that we have here for you in terms of receipts. The first of those would be if the real growth rate is lower than what we have forecasted here, if that 1.1% and 1.6% are too low or too high. That is one potential risk for uncertainty. The other risk is, of course, inflation. If inflation comes in faster than the revenue estimating group is estimating, then obviously the natural reaction would be to say that's a good thing. We want inflation to get down quicker. But in terms of our state receipts estimates, that might actually be an indicator that they're likely to be lower than we have forecasted. So I just want everybody to have that thought and understanding in mind as we take a look at this. The other thing that I would note is that the group is forecasting an unemployment rate for the United States of 4.4% for calendar year 2023, just Friday, the December report came in, and the unemployment rate is at a 50-year low of 3.5%. And so obviously the group does have quite a bit of concern that unemployment rate is likely to grow over the calendar year for the nation as a whole. And obviously there's a certain link between the national level and the state rate. So with that being said, I would turn over to the actual revenue forecast itself. If you turn to page 9 of the memo in front of you, you will see a table that at the top is labeled Table 1, and the following page, page 10, has Table 2. Table 1 shows the actual fiscal year 2022 receipts, as well as the November estimates for fiscal years 2023 and 2024. Table 2 on the following page shows the changes that we made to the fiscal year 2023 estimates when we met in November. Of course, there is no Table 3 showing the changes to the fiscal 2024 estimate because November was the first fiscal 2024 estimate. When we revise the estimates in April, that will be a revised estimate for fiscal 23 and fiscal 24, and accordingly, there will be one further table. And so kind of first, maybe the thing I would note is that on Table 2, the bottom line total is that we added $794.2 million to the fiscal year 2023 estimate when we made the estimate in November. And so that results in a current year estimate of $9.701 billion, which is a 22.6% increase in terms of total receipts over the fiscal 2022 actuals. However, right there, I'm gonna stop and caution and jump up a few lines. That includes both taxes and non-tax receipts to the state general fund. If you'll jump up just a few lines from that bottom line total on Table 1, you'll see the total taxes line, and you'll see there we've got $10.059 billion, which represents a 3.1% increase over the prior year actual amounts. And so the total taxes are much less dramatic of a change than that 22.6. The big explanation for that very dramatic change is in the net transfers in and out of the state general fund. In fiscal year 2022, the legislature and governor enacted pretty substantial transfers out of the state general fund, both to the budget stabilization fund and then also to the KPERS trust fund. Those are by and large wrapped up at the end of 2022, and we have just one transfer to KPERS in 2023. And then if you look at the 2024 transfers amount, those return to kind of the long run normal levels. So there are some extraordinary transfers in fiscals 22 and 23 that really throw off the total receipts numbers for those years. And so in terms of year over year growth, there's really so much noise in those that they're almost not helpful to look at. And the total taxes line is probably more useful to look at. From there, you can see that the total receipts number for fiscal 2024 is $10.124 billion, which represents a 4.4 year-over-year increase. The total tax number is $10.154 billion, which represents a 0.9% year-over-year increase. Of course, that does factor in reduced receipts attributable to continuing reductions to the food sales tax rate, and also attributable to the Apex Panasonic agreement that was entered into. And so all of that is now kind of implicit within these receipts. And so with that being said, I would just kind of conclude with what to look for in the monthly receipts in coming months. The first thing I would note is actually in reference to the December receipts that we just wrapped up. You might have noticed that December receipts showed that fiscal year to date, the state was about $110 million ahead of what we were anticipating. I want to caution that most of that, even perhaps actually more than 100% of that, is somewhat of a mirage that is likely to disappear and go the other way in coming months. And that is attributable to the SALT Parity Act. You may remember that the SALT Parity Act is a piece of legislation that that the legislature passed last year and was signed into law. It was a part of Senate substitute for House Bill 2239. That is a piece of legislation that is revenue neutral for the state, but results in Kansans being able to, in essence, reduce their federal tax liability in total. And so since that was revenue neutral for the state, the revenue estimating group did not meaningfully contemplate it in making our estimates. However, while it is revenue neutral in total, it does actually result in a shift from individual income tax receipts to corporate income tax receipts. The kind of peanut of that piece of legislation is that for certain pass-through entities, they pay their state taxes at the entity level rather than at the individual level to allow them to deduct those taxes at the federal level. And so accordingly, they're now being paid as corporate taxes, where in the past they would have been paid as individual taxes. The other thing it results in addition to a shift across tax sources, is a shift in the timing of those receipts. The corporate taxes were largely paid as estimated taxes in the month of December, and we've actually got a little bit more that is now spilled over into the month of January. If those were being paid as individual income taxes, they would have been paid likely as either individual estimated taxes in the month of January or in the form of balance due taxes in the months of April and May when taxpayers went to reconcile their taxes for the year. And so a lot of that is likely to disappear. In fact, at the end of the month of December, the Department of Revenue indicates that we received about $130 million of SALT Parity Act payments. And so that $110 million really is false, and it might be better to think of that as us being about $20 million short of the fiscal year to date receipts. There is going to continue to be more noise in the month of January because of continued estimated payments that came in kind of in very early January that were likely mailed in the month of December by estimated corporate taxpayers. The fact that we don't know how much of that will show up in the form of reduced individual estimateds in January as opposed to reduced individual balance due payments in April and May. And so corporate and individual are going to be very noisy basically until we get this hopefully trued up on April 20th with our new estimates. Our plan internally at KLRD is to keep informing you of the progress that withholding tax receipts have made over that time period, because of the fact that basically none of this should involve withholding tax receipts. Withholding tax makes up the bulk of the individual income tax, and it's likely to be therefore a better indicator than trying to parse through the total numbers for individual and corporate. Another thing that I would advise you to keep a lookout for in coming months is that the month of February's receipts, which will be available to for consumption on March 1st, are the first month that will show the impacts of the food sales tax rate reduction that, of course, went into effect just last week on January 1st. The first time that you'll really be able to see that are February. So January this month will likely be kind of an all-time high for sales tax receipts, because then the food sales tax rate cuts go into effect with the February receipts. And then the other thing that I would just note is that generally speaking, February and March kind of make up the refund portion of individual income tax filing season. Usually if a taxpayer is owed a refund, they are likely to file their taxes more quickly. And if they owe the state money, they're likely to file their taxes later in the season. And so broadly speaking, February and March is refund season. April and May is balance due season. And so that's just something for you to keep in mind. If you look at the absolute numbers, you'll see that our individual income tax numbers probably are going to be pretty light in the months of February and March. That's actually very normal. And just for your information. And so with that, all being said, obviously, we will keep very close eyes on what the receipts are doing as we get up to April 20th, and that's when the group will reconvene to revise the estimates. And with that being said, I would happily stand for whatever questions the committee might have.
Okay. Thank you, Eddie. I just had a few questions to start off with. Back on the SALT parity, will we have a fairly good idea at month end of January where that's at, or is it likely to be that April 20 before we really have a good idea of those numbers?
I think that by the month of January, we should have a good estimate in terms of how much is being paid at the entity level. And then, of course, beyond that, it's the way the program works is it's a credit for taxes paid, a dollar credit for taxes paid. So every dollar that is paid in the form of corporate estimateds pursuant to the SALT Parity Act would result in a tax credit being available to taxpayers to be claimed on their individual income tax returns. And so at the end of January, we should have kind of the amount of credit that can be earned available, but it won't really be until farther on that we really get it trued up on the individual side. The other thing I mentioned, that getting trued up in April and May, of course, taxpayers can claim extensions where they make the bulk of their payment at the time that they claim file for the extension, but then they don't do their full final filing and do their full reconciliation payment until the month of October. And other states that have enacted similar legislation have kind of indicated that some of that seems to take all the way until October to really get fully trued up when those taxpayers who are on extension file their returns.
Another question I had was another piece of legislation that we had passed last year. You didn't refer to it, but we took action to eliminate the prepaid sales tax filing. Has the impact of that been fully realized? It was another one of those. It was kind of a zero-sum game because we were truing things up. But is that reflected in this report?
The impact of that has essentially been fully realized. That took effect July. And so if you go back and look at the monthly receipts memo for the first month of the fiscal year, July receipts show kind of a very low sales tax number, the lowest that we've had in many years. And that's because no longer were estimated payments being made. Now, kind of conceptually, there's a little bit of that to still show up, because really what it results in is a 1 month delay indefinitely. And so it's actually the June of this coming year payment being shifted into fiscal 24 that happens. But for all practical purposes, that has happened at this point. And were it not for that policy change, our sales and use tax receipts would be higher to date than they are. And so if you look at the year over year amounts in the actual receipts for sales and use, keep in mind that those numbers are lower than they normally would be. It's because of the elimination of those estimated payments that essentially took effect in July.
Yeah, it truly had an impact on the entire fiscal year on those numbers, but I think the impact has been fully realized. We're just finishing out the fiscal year. Okay. Yeah, committee, are there any questions for Mr. Penner? Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eddie, how long do you think it'll take to know how accurate the estimates have been on the impact of the food sales tax reduction? I know you have estimates. When will you feel comfortable that those estimates are correct?
We should start to get a pretty good picture that very first month that those receipts are feeding in the month of February. Obviously, there still could be noise in those receipts in terms of just if the underlying estimates are off by a certain amount. If you are somebody who follows the monthly receipts closely, you'll notice that right now we are behind on both sales and use taxes. Some of that may be attributable to another kind of limitation of the monthly receipts memos, and that is that with this shift with the elimination of the estimated payments and a shift in terms of what month's transactions are reflected in each individual month, we had some difficulty fully grasping how much of the holiday shopping season takes place in November versus December. It used to be the case that December receipts reflected the latter 2 weeks of November and an estimate for the first 2 weeks, in essence, of December. Under current law, December receipts reflect the entire month of November. And so the entire month of December shows up in January. And so we are actually really watching sales and use tax receipts closely for the month of January to see if we do start to kind of close that gap. And if that might have been, it's hard to tell at this point if the error is in the underlying estimates or if the error is in our parsing those into the individual monthly estimates. But at the end of December, we should have a better idea on that. And accordingly, at the end of February, we'll have a good idea on the food sales tax, but it still won't be totally possible to tell if the error is in the food sales tax estimate or in just the underlying sales tax estimate.
And one more, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Do we anticipate receiving any more COVID money from the federal government?
I'm not well prepared to speak to that right now. That usually actually doesn't flow into the state general fund. It usually stays in its own special federal funds until such times as it's expended. But at this point, I don't know of any federal legislation that is pending that would provide that sort of special aid to states that was provided for in both, I believe, the CARES Act and then also again in the American Rescue Plan Act.
Okay, Eddie, I had another question going back to the economic forecast. For some reason, I seem to be stuck on legislation that we passed last year, but we had this little thing called Apex, and included in that was a reduction in the corporate sales tax rate. If I remember correctly, that business had to be certified before that rate would take effect. Has that happened yet? And what's been built into this report?
So in order for that rate reduction to take effect, an agreement had to be entered into and a certification had to be made from the Secretary of Commerce that construction had commenced, and it had to be done by September 20th in order for that to happen for the following tax year. While the agreement was entered into by September 20th, construction on that project had not yet commenced by September 20th. And so that certification, I believe, wasn't made until the month of December. And so that corporate rate reduction won't take effect for tax year 2023, but it will take effect for tax year 2024. And that is the assumption that we made in November when we did these estimates, that we would get that certification prior to September of next year, and we now have. So that rate reduction is scheduled, and it's scheduled to take effect under the same assumption that we made in making these estimates.
Thank you. Committee, are there any final questions? Seeing none, Eddie, thank you for that in-depth presentation. Committee, that concludes our business for the day. Unless there's anything else for the good of the committee,